All right, so I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Austin Knight from Chevron. So he's Vice President of Hydrogen at Chevron New Energies. He assumed the position of Vice President of Hydrogen for Chevron New Energies in February 2022. In this role, he is responsible for accelerating Chevron's lower carbon business prospects, including the commercialization of our hydrogen business opportunities. In 2023, he was appointed chair of the coordinating committee for the National Petroleum Council study on hydrogen energy, which was released in April 2024. And I think he'll say a few words about that NPC study, which if you do anything on hydrogen, that's all everybody seems to talk about is this NPC study. So can't wait to see what he's going to say about that. He previously served as the Vice President, Large Industries, World Business Line for Air Liquide, a world leader in industrial gases, supplying over 400 global customers with oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and syngas. Addressing climate and energy transition needs for a sustainable future in industrial supply chains through hydrogen, carbon capture, and renewable electricity have been a strong emphasis of his work. In this last role, he led the global vision, customer experience, industrial strategy, energy management, and technical roadmap activities for supply of industrial gases to major chemical producers, refineries, and steel manufacturers. In his role with Air Liquide, Austin also led the hydrogen business for several years, with demonstrated experience in production units, purification plants, storage facilities, and pipeline infrastructure for hydrogen transport. Prior to joining Air Liquide in 2007, he was a lead electrical engineer at Fluor, a leading global engineering, procurement, and construction firm. Why were you taking finance from Hartzell? Anyway, conversation for another time. All right, Austin holds a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Texas A&M University and an MBA from UT from McCombs School of Business. All right, thank you, Austin. Welcome to the stage.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Hydrogen Day. I agree, Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Day. I typically shorten it. Thanks for the really kind introduction. Brian, thank you. It's great to have Representative Darby here and President Hartzell as well. I'm still relishing the B that I received in Hartzell's class many years ago. I'm pretty sure I couldn't do better than that. But that was a really generous introduction. Thank you. Thank you all, especially Representative Darby, President Hartzell, for the strong leadership shown in this space and really creating an environment where energy can thrive. UT for education and research, Representative Darby around policy and stakeholder engagement. These things are really essential to advancing towards an energy future that is great for all of us. At Chevron, we have a very strong belief, and it's very simple. It's that energy drives human progress. And we see here, and we've already seen on the stage, really leading energy champions that have been instrumental partners in advancing towards this progress. And that's progress not only here in Texas, but it's progress in the United States and it's progress in the world. And so, on behalf of everybody that has been putting together this Hydrogen Day here at UT, I just want to say, welcome to the future of energy. This is where things are going, and this is the leading edge of advancements in energy. Hydrogen is here. I like to say hydrogen is happening. It has the potential to become a sizable energy source for the future. When I talk about hydrogen, we talk about low carbon intensity hydrogen. And so a lot of times we'll shorten that to LCI hydrogen. But when I talk about hydrogen, even if I just say hydrogen, it could be hydrogen derivatives like ammonia, products without that carbon intensity, and it's low carbon intensity products that's going to lead us in our energy future. And it has many unique advantages. And I think most of you being here at Hydrogen Day probably know this, but it's poised to be a leading molecule in helping nations around the world accelerate to their climate goals. This is an essential molecule, especially where electrification of the demand is not very feasible. And so we know we need to find these solutions that are lower carbon solutions for a growing world. We need to build viable and commercially successful industries to do it, and we need to do it on a global scale. So we need your help. We need your help in evolving towards an all-in approach of energy. Too often, we are posed with an either-or choice that is a false choice. We really need to evolve towards all-in on energy solutions because it's going to take many different solutions. And we all need to embrace an understanding that the energy transition, which is really an energy expansion, will require an incredible, unprecedented amount of innovation and collaboration. And so I think that's a call to action for all of us. We need your scientific knowledge. We need your engineering know-how. We need your technical expertise, your policy proficiency, and we need every ounce of creativity and ingenuity that you can bring to this space. If we do that, we'll be able to solve the tough problems. We'll be able to achieve the technology breakthroughs, we'll pioneer innovations, and we will achieve the emission reductions that we need to ultimately create a better world. And if that challenge doesn't inspire you, I think you're in the wrong room. I can tell you that it really inspires us at Chevron. And I want to share a few things that we're doing in the space. So just to set the context, IEA projects that hydrogen will make up to 12% of the total energy system by 2050. And for reference, today, nuclear is about 10% of the total system. So again, one solution, an essential solution for the future. But it's going to take a lot to get there. When we look at low carbon intensity hydrogen today, it's very small. We need to see that scaled by 200 times. And ultimately, that's going to require a lot of investment to get there. I don't know how easy this is to read, but at Chevron, we look at the markets, we see where we play best, where we lend strengths to this new emerging market, and we really see stages of demand starting to materialize where policy in support of climate goals intersects with the reality of being able to bring pragmatic solutions. And so Asia Pacific is looking to decarbonize their power sector, but they're energy importers, and they're looking at ways to reduce the carbon intensity of the products they're bringing in to still power their economies. Europe is aiming for the most cost-effective ways to reduce emissions from their industry, and they have a price on carbon. They have mechanisms in place. They're looking for real solutions to deliver that. And then finally, California is targeting zero-emission trucking within the next decade, within their ecosystem. And so these are all very large challenges that are very near term and things we're addressing. And at Chevron, I'm really proud of what we're already showing that is real on the ground. The biggest investment we made in hydrogen to date in the LCI hydrogen space is a project in Utah called ACES Delta. This is Advanced Clean Energy Storage. I think we'll be talking later today about geologic storage of hydrogen. Essentially, this project, which is over 90% complete with construction, moving into commissioning, and will be operating next year, will be able to store 300 gigawatt hours of dispatchable electricity to put back onto the grid when there's an imbalance of what the demand is in the market versus what the sun and wind can produce. This is long duration energy storage, and it's a phenomenal, real example of a project that you can go see and you can touch and you can feel, and we look forward to that being in operation next year. It is a solution to deal with seasonality of renewables as sun and wind renewable generation ramps up, but we need a way to keep the lights on and to keep reliable supply to the grid. So we're very proud of that one. We're also developing a solar to hydrogen project in California. Again, talking about this heavy-duty trucking regulation that's coming into California. Obviously, Chevron has been in California for 145 years. And so we have a lot of land in California, land that happens to have a good amount of sun, and we also have produced water from our oil fields. We can take power that right now is underutilized solar production and the water that's being produced, and we can now use that to produce hydrogen and supply that hydrogen into these developing transportation industries in California, again, looking at the zero-emission trucks and zero-emission fleets out there. We're developing technical solutions, both through investments into young startup companies, and then also offering our own technical expertise in development. Liquid organic hydrogen carriers are a possible way in the future to utilize existing oil and gas infrastructure and move hydrogen around the world. We are also trialing hydrogen blending in existing gas turbines. And we've been able to show that you can blend to very high rates of hydrogen in existing gas turbines while still keeping NOx levels low, and do that in a very seamless way as a solution for industrial decarbonization options. And then finally, we're building out retail stations in California as well. And that infrastructure piece, it can easily become a chicken or the egg problem when you look at the scale of the challenge in front of us to get hydrogen supply, to do that economically, to transport that to markets and serve new fleets with new technologies that are adopting in this space. But each of us has a role to play. And this is an area where we are making real material advances to serve some of these early markets. I'm also extremely proud of the National Petroleum Council study. So I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this. Bear with me because the work is fantastic. And then we're going to go into a panel to talk about what's going on here at UT that makes all of this real. Brian mentioned the NPC study. And the first thing I want to say is thank you to UT. Mark Schuster led an incredible amount of work on this study, a lot of support from the university in making this real. And I'm just could not be more thankful for the end product that was put forth here. This was about a 2-year effort. The Secretary of Energy poses questions to the National Petroleum Council. And the National Petroleum Council is not only petroleum companies. You'll see here we had about 200 contributors to our study from 100 different organizations. 30% were oil and gas. We had a significant amount of participation from other areas of industry that are not traditionally in the oil and gas space. We had manufacturers. We had all kinds of support from folks outside of industry, from universities, from think tanks, from NGOs, from everybody really wanting to grapple with and deal with the realities of hydrogen deployment, to do things that have never been done before, but to work through all of those challenges, sometimes with people that don't typically agree. And we took on this challenge posed by Secretary Granholm to describe where does hydrogen fit in a drive towards the U.S. climate goals, what are the gaps between the reality today and where it needs to be in the future, and what do we do about it? And so we spent 2 years with this very diverse group of people, first doing a lot of modeling with MIT to determine what actually is the role of hydrogen. We didn't want to start with hydrogen and try to fit it in to everywhere, because we had that tool in our toolbox. We didn't want to just say it was the right tool for every job. And so we first started by modeling the entire energy system and looking at where we believed the current trajectory was today based on existing policy in achieving our climate goals. The spoiler alert is we're not on track. So probably no surprise to anybody in this room. We do see progress. We just don't see enough progress. We forced an outcome of getting to net zero by 2050, and we modeled this with MIT. And what we saw is there is a long way to go, but a significant role for hydrogen in getting to that net zero by 2050 case. Hydrogen in the end here shows that it will account for the decarbonization, the reduction of emissions by about 8% of the total system. So it's something, it's not the only thing, it's an important thing. We also looked at how much does it cost society to decarbonize, and the answer overall is about 3% of GDP. And that's looking at all of the solutions to be implemented toward that net zero goal by 2050. But if you didn't use hydrogen, it would cost you up to an additional %. And we say it would cost potentially up to an additional $260 billion per year to the US consumers if you don't deploy hydrogen and you go with the next best alternative. We looked in detail at where it fits, and this is the net zero trajectory case. You would have to scale up the overall hydrogen system by 7 times, but you also have to reduce the carbon intensity of all of that hydrogen. And you essentially see adoption in 3 main sectors where hydrogen makes sense. About 60% of the total hydrogen demand in this case would go to heavy industry. So we're talking about oil refining, petrochemical production, steel manufacturing. These processes require very high temperature heat that electricity is not suitable enough to meet, especially when you have hydrogen as a solution. We also see then the rest of the split, the remaining 40%, is about split equally between heavy-duty transportation, power applications to support the grid, and then finally some export product. And the heavy duty I've talked about, this is where likely batteries will not be suitable for heavy, long distance, high utilization hauling of products or people. And in power, the application that we talked about was my example with ACES Delta. The grid reliability requires something that can be dispatchable to ensure that electrons keep the lights on, and hydrogen has a role to play there. Additionally, as I mentioned, a lot of the world are energy importers, and they're looking to the US to be a hydrogen supplier to support them in their climate goals. And so that's why you see that final top bit of the bar is exports. How is it produced? Our study tried really hard to stay away from using colors of green and blue or turquoise or pink. But in the end, we really recognize, look, there's 2 main pathways. One is the green pathway, we call it the electrolytic pathway. This is electrolysis of water. The other pathway we called CCS enabled. This is natural gas plus CCS for carbon capture and storage. This is the pathway that can scale most quickly and early, but it will always be needed. So that natural gas view gets you a certain percentage up to maybe 40% of your total, and then the electrolysis pathway with renewable electricity gets you the rest of the way up about 60% of the total. But that requires in total about $2 trillion of investment in electrical infrastructure and renewable development in electrolysis and in build out of the infrastructure to support all of this towards our goals. The other reality we found, and this was surprising to some and not surprising to others, is that without carbon policy, hydrogen does not just happen. No matter how good we are at making technologies more efficient, at getting down the cost curve, at scaling manufacturing, we find you still do not see cost parity of the lower carbon intensity products with the higher carbon intensity products. It just doesn't happen. And remember, This was not the oil and gas view. We had 100 different organizations participating with their detailed data, their cost curves, their projections of where this is going to go. And what we see is, and we modeled this regionally, so this is a US Gulf Coast example by 2050. What you see is the costs come down, and it's a little bit hard to describe what you're seeing on the screen, but the takeaway is this. Green remains more expensive than blue, on average in most cases, and blue remains more expensive than gray. The higher carbon intensity products are cheaper, even in the long run, than the lower carbon intensity products. So what are we going to do about this? And this was the question posed to us. Where do you go to close that gap? This does not have carbon pricing in it. This does not have IRA 45V, 45Q. This doesn't have anything in it. This is the reality. Policy and other advancements have to close that gap. And so we made 23 recommendations. I'm not going to go through all those here, but at the very top of the list of recommendations is to put a price on carbon. To close this gap, a well-designed carbon policy will allow the markets to work, to develop the technologies, to advance them and close these gaps. Second to that was permitting. We have to be able to permit the facilities of the future. We have to be able to permit carbon storage. We have to be able to permit electrical infrastructure, pipelines. All of these things are extremely important to getting these projects to become reality. Policy and regulation were at the top of our list. We also dug very deep into what we called societal, social considerations and impacts. We included safety in that, of course. We know a lot about hydrogen safety, and industry has been doing this for a long time, but the reality is every community is going to view these developments very differently. And companies investing in this space need to take local stakeholder engagement extremely seriously, need to be focused on education, on workforce development, and on the safety of the communities in which they operate. A lot of people will find this very new and they'll have a lot of questions. I cannot overemphasize enough the role that we all have to be in those communities, working with them, sharing the realities of what it takes to make this real. And then finally, technology, research, development, and deployment. So we talked about RD&D, and there's a role the government has in policies to advance public-private partnerships towards getting us better technologies, more efficient technologies, breakthroughs, and getting us down the cost curve. The slide before where you look at this cost gap, that doesn't project any possible breakthrough in the future. Could it happen? I definitely hope so. This is the type of place where it's going to happen. It's going to happen at universities, national labs. It's going to happen with companies like Chevron working on our own R&D and then doing all that together to advance this deployment. So we're very proud of this study. I'm very thankful to University of Texas for their support on all of it. A fantastic effort. If you are really interested, there are 1,000 pages of reports with details, everything super open access to everybody. That's a great task for AI. Probably not a great task for each individual, but know what's there and be able to target and share the information that's in this report. Go to harnessinghydrogen.npc.org. There's a QR code there. npc.org has all the studies that have been done in the past. And at least check out the very short executive summary. So it's not the 1,000 pages. You can get a really nice 60 to 80 page version that highlights all the takeaways from that. Just a fantastic effort. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support. Happy Hydrogen Day. And we are going to move to a panel. So unfortunately, you get to hear a little bit more from me, but fortunately, you get to hear now from 4 just fantastic leading edge researchers in this space. And so let's see if everybody's ready to come on stage. And I'm going to transition over here, and we'll have our next bit of our panel. All right, Brian, thank you.